you can draw this in Procreate. I'll take you through all the steps to create this painting in Procreate using brushes that are already in the app. The great thing about this project is that it's messy. Wonky and unsteady brushstrokes work really well with this style, so there's really no need for perfectionism. I'm sure that your end result will look flotastic. Just grab the color palette from the link in the description, it's totally free, and set the size of your canvas to 2300 pixels by 3000 pixels. And then if you're ready, let's get started. Let's start by drawing our main hill. We'll go and use one of the calligraphy brushes. Over here, we'll use the monoline brush. And for the color, we'll use this fourth color in the first row. Now let me zoom out a little bit so we can see the edges of our canvas. Otherwise, we have this risk of not going from the left all the way to the right and leaving a gap. Now, make sure to set the opacity of your brush to 100%. I'll set the size to 30. And then we'll start about, well, like halfway of this height of our canvas. And then we'll make a nice curve like this to the right, like this. And it's okay if it's a little bit wonky. And then drop your color underneath. Then we are going to make a layer underneath this one. We'll tap the plus and then tap and hold this layer to drag it underneath our hill. Then for our brush, we will go to the painting brushes and then we'll use the Nico roll. And for our color, we are going to use this one over here, third color. And let's check the size of the brush. Let's make it a little bit smaller. We'll go for around 14% and the opacity is at 100%. And then we'll make a hill shape over here. And just color in this block. And let's do the same over here. Simple hill shape. And then we'll make a layer underneath this one. We'll tap the plus and then tap and hold that new layer. Drag it underneath layer 2. And we'll pick a lighter color. We'll pick this one, second color in the second row. And then let's make another hill. A little bit higher. Something like this. And let's also make one here. And like this. We can keep it rough. And then let's make one more layer for even a lighter hills in the distance. So first tap the plus, then tap and hold and drag it to the bottom. And then grab this color. First color in the second row. And we can make one over here, maybe one in between here, and let's make one here. Then we'll grab another brush. We'll go to the artistic brushes and use the Quoll. And then let's go back to that top layer here, or it's not the top layer, but the top one of our distant hills. We'll tap that layer and turn on alpha lock so we won't be able to go outside of the shape anymore. And then let's grab this color, second color in the second row. The opacity of this brush is at 100%. Let's set the size to 20. And then let's just go over the top a little bit, adding some extra texture, just with very little pressure. And now we can go to the hills in the middle. This one, tap that layer and also turn on alpha lock. And then for this one, we'll grab that darker color, that third one. And then we can go over the bottom a little bit. Just for that extra touch of texture. And then once you have this, once you're happy with these distant hills, you can just pinch these layers together. So we have one layer for the distant hills and one for our foreground hill. Now let's add some nice texture to that foreground hill. And let's first turn on alpha lock so we won't be able to go outside of that shape. And then let's stick with this brush with that Quoll brush. We are going to make a nice gradient from dark red to the lighter oranges. So that's this gradient. Mostly the four colors in the middle. You can add a little bit of the lighter ones and a little bit of the dark ones, but mostly these four colors. So let's start by adding some red. That third color in the first row. Let's just go over here and add these red touches. And if you leave your pen on the screen, you see that the colors will mix a little bit. And if you lift your pen, you will get new paint. You can also add some of that lighter orange. That's the fifth color in the first row. Let's add that to the top. Make it nice and messy. We just want some colors on here. And then let's add this one, second color in the first row. That's a nice dark color. We can add that a little bit in the foreground. And once you have something like this, what you can do is tap and hold the smudge tool so that it will automatically switch to the quill brush. And then you can use that quill brush as a smudge tool. Let's turn down the strength a little bit to 60%. And let's also turn down the size to maybe around 25. And now we can go over here and we can mix this together a little bit. Making some rounded motions, creating some texture and a nice blend. Just some random jagged motions. Maybe a little bit more over here. And then what we'll do is go back to the brush, to our quill brush, use it as a regular brush. But now we are going to pick colors from our painting. So you can just pick a color here and then go over an area a little bit, adding some extra texture. So you can grab a light color and go over a darker area a little bit, or grab a darker color and go over an area that's a little bit lighter, creating some like blotchy effects, some nice texture in there. Make it nice and messy. Perhaps a little bit of this color over here. I want that nice crunchy painterly texture in there. And of course we can also just grab a color over here, that darker color, to maybe add a little bit more of that darker color here in the foreground. Something like this. Now I also want the edge to be a bit more like messy. So let's turn off alpha lock and get rid of this super crisp line. Perhaps we can just grab a local color, make the brush a little bit smaller, maybe 2%, let's see. That can work. But you have to be careful that you don't smudge it too much so that you get like an opening. You still want it to be fully opaque. Perhaps what we could also try is grab that Nico roll brush and then make that smaller, like 2%. Maybe a bit bigger, 7. You can also use that for a bit more of a, like a jagged edge. Well, not entirely jagged, but at least a little bit irregular and not as clean as you get with the monoline brush. Just grab local colors, create a nice edge like this. Go over here a little bit. You can also use this brush for even a bit more texture. I think this is great. Now it's time to craft ourselves a little house. We're going to do that on a layer in between these two. I want it to be behind this layer, but on top of this layer. So we'll tap this layer first, then tap the plus, and then for our color, let's grab this one, a fourth color in the third row. And for the brush, let's go to the inking brushes and use a studio pen. The opacity of this brush is at 100%. I have the size at 20. And let's create a house that is a little bit wonky. We don't want a perfect house. I want a playful little house. Let's make a line going up. And we'll just make a pointy part here. Then go down, down here. And here I want the side of the house. So we'll make a diagonal line and then go down. And make sure the shape is closed at the bottom behind your hill. So if I turn this off, you'll see that the shape is closed and that everything looks quite messy behind our hill. But once it's closed, you can drag in a color. And let's check our size. Is it big enough? Well, maybe we can make it a little bit bigger. We can just add to our pointy part. Go for something like this. And then our house needs a roof. And we'll do that on a new layer. So we'll tap the plus again. And then for our color, we'll grab this one. That's the sixth color in the third row. And we'll make a line like this. We'll follow that curve here. Then we'll go up like this along this side. And here we'll make a part sticking out like this. Line up. This is one side of the roof. Then over here we'll go down and then connect these two. And remember, it can be a little bit wonky. That will add to the charm of this illustration. Then to clean this up, you can tap and hold the eraser to make that switch to the studio pen. And let's check the size. 10% is good. Opacity should be at 100%. And then you can use this to make parts more crisp, more pointy. Go over here. Maybe make this a little bit more like this. I think this looks good. Then let's move to this layer. Let's also use the eraser there. Let's clean this up a little bit. Make it nice and straight. And then we'll switch to the, where is it? The Nico roll brush. And we are going to grab a lighter color, starting with this one, third color in the third row. And we'll turn on alpha lock on this layer. So we won't be able to change our shape anymore. So tap that. And then let's just go over here, add some of that lighter gray. And then let's go even lighter with this color, a second color in the third row. And let's just add that to the front here. And now we can go even lighter. We can use this color, first color in the third row. And let's just use that over here a little bit. Then for some more shading, we can grab that, a dark gray again, fourth color. And we can go along this edge, create a bit of a shadow, and over here as well. Next, let's make a new layer. We'll tap the plus, and then we'll use this color, a fifth color in the second row. And let's grab the inking brush again, the studio pen. And then let's add a simple door. Just shape like this. And let's make some rectangular windows. And again, it's nice if it looks a little bit wonky. Circle over here, we can color these in. And I just don't want those rounded corners. So we can grab the eraser and then just go along the edges. Like this. And we're we can also use this to add an extra touch to the windows. Let's check the size. Maybe make it a little bit smaller, 4%. And for instance, make a cross here, some lines here. Again, it's nice if it's a bit wonky. Maybe make this one a little bit thinner even. I think this really adds to the charm of our house. Now, I think the great thing about this tutorial is that you can vary with it endlessly. You can still use these brushes, but use different colors, for instance, create a different type of scene, perhaps with more houses, different types of hills, and really create your own unique piece. Now, if you feel like you still need to build up confidence in Procreate and with digital painting, or if you just really want to get those skills to the next level, then you should really check out my Patreon. This week, for instance, I shared this realism painting tutorial, and it's really a lot easier than it looks. And this is just one of the more than 200 tutorials that I have at Patreon, and they range from beginner levels to more advanced levels. So you can dive right in. And I think it would be great to see you there. But now let's continue. Now let's add a touch of texture to the roof. Let's tap this layer, turn on alpha lock, and then let's grab the Nico roll brush again. Where is it? Under painting, and let's first add a little bit of this color, fifth color in the third row. Let's make our brush a bit bigger, maybe 20%. Let's see. Well, it's a bit big. 8. Add some texture here. And then let's also add a little bit of this dark texture. Dark color, that's the 7th color in the third row. And for our brush, we can go to the drawing brushes and use the Freycinet. Let's check the size. Let's make it a bit bigger. Maybe 12%. The opacity is at 100. And let's add a little bit of this dark color over here. Then let's make it nice and small. Maybe 2%, let's see. Yeah, that's nice. Now you can add some like lines like this. Various thicknesses. Nice looking texture over here as well. And then finally, let's add a chimney. Just a very simple chimney. We can do that on this layer where the windows are on. And let's go to the inking brushes again for our studio pen. And for the color, we can stick with this. And let's just make a shape like this. And we can use the eraser to carve it. And we can add a little bit of extra with our brush again. Longer part here. And then again, with the eraser, make it more crisp. Next, I'd like to work on a path towards our house. So first, once you're happy with your house, you can of course pinch these layers together. Then let's go to our hill layer and let's tap the plus for a new layer on top. And then we'll set that layer to clipping mask so that whatever we draw here, it'll only show up on this shape. And then for the color, we'll use this one. First color, third row, and for the brush, let's go to the drawing brushes and use the Oberon brush. Now let me check the size. It's actually okay. Opacity is at 100%, size at 8%. And we are going to make a curving path. We'll start here, and then it'll curve like this. Then we'll go down with a curve towards the viewer, and the path will get wider as we move to the front. So here it'll be wide, and then as we move towards the distance, it'll get thinner. Not really, but it will appear to look more, well, like small, narrow. Try not to push too hard with your brush. Try to get some some texture in there. And as you move down to this area, of course, you can make the brush a little bit bigger, perhaps 30%. Go in there. So we'll get something like this. And then to add some more texture in here, I'd like to add a layer mask to this layer. You can tap it and then tap mask. And now on this layer mask, we can paint with black to remove parts. It's a bit like erasing, but it's non-destructive. You can always just go over with white again and then everything will reappear. So that's super handy. Now first I'd like to go to the charcoals and use the burnt tree. And I will set our color to black. You can just go to your colors, double tap here for black. And then when you go over here, things will disappear. I want the brush to be smaller. Maybe something like 30%. The opacity is at 100. Let's check. Yeah, that's nice. A little bit along the edges. Getting some more texture there. Not too much. And then we can also add some spackles perhaps. We can go to the spray paints and use the flicks brush for some nice splatter. Let's check the size. That's actually okay. Opacity is at 100. Size at 20%. And we can go along the edge a little bit just for a few little flicks. Next, let's add trees to our scene. Let's make a new layer. Let's do that on a layer. Let's make that on top of this layer. The bottom one, let's tap the plus there. And then for our brush, let's go to the artistic brushes and use the quill brush again. And then for the color, let's go for this one. Third color in the first row. Let's make the brush bigger, perhaps 30%. Let's see. Maybe a little bit smaller. Let's go for 15. And then let's start creating like a tree crown here. We'll make a rounded shape. Something like this. And we are going to use multiple colors. Let's grab this orange, a fourth color in the first row. Add some orange touches. I think we can actually go a little bit smaller even. Let's go for 10%. You get a nice textured edge this way. Maybe we can also add a little bit of this yellow, fifth color in the first row. Just layering colors on top of each other. Then let's move to the red again, third color in the first row. Going darker as we move to that core. Then let's move to this one, second color and the first row. And add that over here. So that will make a nice tree. Then let's make another one. Let's grab the orange again, fourth color in the first row. And let's add another tree over here. Making rounded motions. Making a smaller tree. Then we'll move to the red, third color and the first row. And then we'll go even darker with the second color in the first row. And then I'd also like to add a blue tree. I think that will be a nice variation. Let's grab this color first, third color in the second row. And let's put this tree here. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 5%. So the leaves will appear a little bit smaller. And this one is a little bit behind the house. And then let's go a bit darker with the fourth color in the second row. A little bit over here. So now we have some nice tree crowns. Now we need the branches and the trunks. Let's put those on a new layer. We'll tap the plus for a new layer on top. And then for the brush, we'll go to the inking brushes. And then we'll use the tinderbox brush. And for the color, we'll grab this one. First color in the first row. The opacity of this brush is at 100% and size is at 20%. And then let's start here and just create a line going up and make sure that it's thinner at the end. So use less pressure as you move up and just make lots of branches and thicker at the base and thinner as you move outwards. Just go for something like this. And then do the same for this one. Thinner as you move outwards, lots of side branches. Maybe a little bit thicker here near the bottom. And then for this tree, let's use this color, fifth color in the second row. It's a bit more bluish. And let's make trunk over here. It'll be harder to see the branches against the dark foliage. Something like this will do. I think we could even add a little bit to the foliage for that tree. So let's go back to this layer, and then for the brush, now we need to go to the artistic brushes again for the quill brush. And now we can just grab that blue, again, that third color in the second row, and we can just add a little bit more. Just make that tree a little bit bigger. And then you can switch to that darker color, fourth color in the second row, and add some darker foliage as well. You can just build your trees this way. You can do the same with the red one. We can definitely add some more red, that third color. Add some more foliage on the outside. And then just build on top of that with that second color in the first row. Adding some of that here at the base. So you'll end up with something like this. Now let's move back to our hill. We are going to add grass and more blotches there. Let's make a layer all the way at the top. Let's tap the plus. And then for our brush, we'll go back to the inking brushes and use the Inka brush. And for the color, we'll grab this one. First color in the first row. The opacity of this brush should be at 100% and the size at 9. And then we are going to add a bunch of grass and shapes for flowers. Maybe there are some leaves. And just keep it very loose and expressive. And here in the foreground, these shapes should be a little bit bigger. And perhaps they'll have a little bit more like detail. There will be more flowers. And they should be smaller as you move to the back. Just add a bunch of these like reeds. Maybe some flowers here. But really, don't give it too much thought. Don't try to be super tidy. It's nice if this is loose and expressive. Over here as well. Maybe a big flower here. Little part with leaves. Maybe there's a group of flowers here. So you really don't have to follow my exact shapes here. Try to let go of that. Just try to add these expressive lines. And like I said, make them a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner as you move towards the background. As long as you stick with that principle, it'll look good. So I'm using less pressure as I move to the background so that the lines will get a little bit thinner. But of course, you could also just make your brush a little bit smaller. So also make some lines sticking out over the edge. And some over here near the house. Just in some random places. And then let's switch to this color, first color in the third row, to add some little flower shapes. I'm just making these like wiggly motions. Just to give the impression of some flowers. You can also add some on the ground. And over here, a nice flower. Maybe some small ones here. And let's also use this yellow, this brightest yellow, sixth color in the first row. Let's also use that for some grassy parts. And also for some little yellow flowers. Some flicks here and there. Really not giving this a whole lot of thought, just filling spaces, adding nice expressive brush strokes. And then I just want to add a little bit more texture on this hill. So let's go back here. And for instance, what we could do is use the Flicks brush, that one that we found under spray paints. And we can set the layer to alpha lock again, so we won't be able to go outside of the shape. And then let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 10%. And let's add some flicks here. And perhaps some here. Just like this. We can also add some darker flicks. We can grab this color, second color in the first row, and add some of that over here in the foreground. And let's also grab that quoll brush under, what was it? Artistic. Let's use the quoll brush and just add a little bit more of a dark color. Let's go even darker with that first color in the first row. We can add a little bit more of that color over here. Make the brush a little bit bigger, 14%. Just some dabs. A little bit over here. And we can also use that second color in the first row to make the brush a little bit smaller in this case, 7%. Maybe a little bit underneath this flower. Just a few like shadows here and there, more dabs. I think this looks really nice and expressive. I just want to add one more thing. Let's add a few birds to the scene. Let's go back to the inking brushes, grab the inker brush, and for the color, we can use this one, first color in the first row, and we can go back to this top layer. And let's just add some very simple bird shapes. What I always like to do is make like a V shape, but then make that bottom part a little bit thicker. So that's a very simple bird, but I feel like it looks a bit, yeah, pretty believable. Birds look like simple shapes when they are in the sky. Make a nice little group. And some will be more like stretched, and some will have more like that V shape. But also this doesn't have to look super neat. They can be a little bit wonky. Doesn't have to be perfect. But what is perfect is that you have finished your painting. Great work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.